Alright, gonna try to clean up this center console. It's pretty mucky. So, see what happens here. Usually this quick detailer works pretty good on that stuff. See how this stuff does. Interior detailer cleaner. We'll see. Alright guys, it's coming together. All this stuff cleaned up pretty good with the quick detailer. Got most of the poop off of there. So messing around with putting new studs on the lower intake. Try fitting up that upper. See how that goes. Looks like the studs that came out of there were about 2 inches long. So got the 2.5 inchers. See if the that upper intake folds over to the side, so the ones on the driver's side might be an interference problem. I don't know if I'm gonna have to cut them or whatever, but to fit it up there and see what happens. Alright, looks like this should work with the 2.5 inch studs. There were 2 inch studs in there on the 4 corners. The only issue being can't really get the nut on without lifting the plenum up, but that's not a big deal. I mean, at least the stud's not hitting the plenum. It's going to be the same deal on the back side here. So just have to lift this plenum up to get the nut started on there, but it's going to be way better. I mean, before there was barely any thread for these to bite onto, so now get a really good clamp on there. So it'll work a lot better. Alright guys, I got pretty much everything cleaned up. Getting ready to gotta take the paper towels out of the ports. I'll probably vacuum them out. Everything's cleaned up. Use a little bit of brake parts cleaner, but I really like to use this is wax and grease remover, and then I follow it up with alcohol. You probably don't have to do that, but I like to go the extra step and do a final wipe with alcohol. So kind of like cleaning anything, just like cleaning a car off. I'll use 2 towels. I'll saturate 1 towel with the cleaner, and then I'll use a drying towel. So you make sure the surface is wet when you're wiping it with the dry towel, so you can pull all the dirt off. So I went through and chased out all the hardware, all the mounting bolts. I got some ARP assembly lube that I put on all the washers I'm going to use. And I chased out all the holes in the head. I chased out these studs so that when I run the studs in there, I'm not leaving some kind of debris inside of the cylinder head. It's just taking that extra step to make sure everything's as on the up and up as it can be. And about ready to put some silicone on this stuff. And got those 6 studs on there, so I can line everything up. Should go on pretty nicely. And then I'm going to put some Loctite on all the bolts once I get them in there. I put dabs of silicone in the 4 corners, and then I put the gaskets on. They're marked to the manifold, which should go towards the intake manifold. I did have to take the stud out in the back so I could, you got these tabs on here to hook into the head gasket. So I had to take that stud out so I could get it to go around that tab, and the same thing on the front side of on the front end of the driver's side head. I had to pull that stud out, but that's fine. So you can see I got the silicone kind of squished in there. So I just have to run my thick beads on the front and the back. You definitely want it to overlap up onto the gasket. And I'll be ready to drop the intake down on there. Alright, got my beads. The silicone, or RTV, on the front and back there. Got them worked up onto the gasket. So be ready to set that intake down on those studs. Really like using those studs because it's just super easy to get it lined up. Works out really well. So now I'm gonna start pulling the studs out and start putting the hardware in there. Alright, so I'm just using, I've got a 1/4 inch ratchet that has a 1/4 inch to 3/8 adapter. I got my 3/8 stuff. So I've got my a 1/2 inch deep socket and a 3/8 deep socket. And the 1/2 incher is for those two studs. You got the one that holds down the water. And then, actually I'm not sure why that one's a stud. I don't know, I don't think anything hooks up to it. It's just there to be difficult. So I'll probably snap a picture of this and throw it up there. But you want to follow the torquing procedure. And for the intake manifold, you want to go 15 foot-pounds, then 20 foot-pounds, and then 24 foot-pounds of torque. So what I'm doing right now with the 1/4 inch ratchet, I'm just probably getting like an 1/8 of a turn. It's like you just want to, you really want to evenly apply the torque on the bolts. And you have to keep in mind that if you over torque this lower intake manifold, it's going to want to push those heads apart. It's just going to keep wedging down and want to push stuff apart. So, and that's like, that gets into like guys that end up, you know, milling their heads. It's like, you know, if you cut your heads down, they're going to be closer to the block. You have to get the intake milled too so it'll fit, and your push rod length's probably off too. You know, so like some of the stuff, it's like one modification leads to, you know, a lot more modification down the road because you can't just mill something and everything's going to fit right. It's not really a concern of mine right now, but just for reference. So, like I said, right now I'm just using that 1/4 inch ratchet. I'm just kind of, you know, just gingerly trying to get the bolts kind of snugged up. And then I'm going to move into using the torque wrench. Like I said, the first round you want to go 15, the second one 20, and the third one 24. And that should be good. And I put thread locker on there. So, you know, you want to make sure you're ready to do this all in one shot. It's like you want to be able to put the RTV down, which depends, I mean, it's pretty cool in here. It's probably like 60 degrees. So I don't really have to rush anything. But, you know, it's like you want to be ready to go. Like I got all the washers lubed up and ready to go. And then, you know, got the intake on. And then I started putting the thread locker on all the intake bolts. So once you start putting those, you know, once you got the thread locker on there, you want to make sure you go to town on getting this stuff tightened up. I mean, take your time, but you don't want to put the thread locker in there and like finger a bolt in and walk away for a couple hours and then come back and finish the job. You're gonna have issues. So I'm gonna start torquing this, and this should be good to go. Looks like it turned out pretty good. Just a little quick wipe on the front there where the distributor goes. That turned out pretty nice. And then, you know, coming back to the temperature thing, it's like, it's kind of like working in a body shop. You know, in the summertime when a body man puts like a rear body panel on a car and puts caulk on it, you know, that caulk will lock up within, I mean, sometimes 15 minutes if it's warm enough. And it's funny because in the wintertime, they'll come over and tell me, you know, oh, hey, that rear body panel is ready for you. I just got done caulking it. And he's like, oh, it probably needs like a half hour to dry up because it's cool out. And it's like, no, dude, it's going to need a heat lamp. It's like you're going to have to put heat into that caulk for it to even to start kicking. So, you know, with this, I'm going to get everything finished up. And then I might use my heat gun. Or I might use, I've got like a little space heater. And I'm just going to try to get some heat into the fasteners and kind of transfer it in and get everything to start kicking. And then the RTV actually relies more on the oxygen content in the air to lock up. But it's like, I still want this to sit. I mean, I'm probably going to let this sit for a couple days before I go finishing anything up. I mean, at the bare minimum, let it sit 24 hours. You know, let it sit overnight or whatever. So, I'm going to get this torqued up and we'll let this thing sit for a while, let everything lock up properly. Alright, I'm down to my last pass. So when you get to that third torque setting, I would do that third torque setting 3 times. So I've already done it twice. This is going to be my 3rd time of doing that last torque setting. And that way you make sure everything is completely even. And that 3rd bolt's got the stud, 1/2 inch socket for this one. Really want to take your time and just go very slowly. You definitely don't want to lay into it and snap torque this stuff. You know, definitely spend a lot of time cleaning everything up, especially all the threads. Like I said, even the threads on those studs that were just going in there temporarily, I completely cleaned those studs off and chased them out just to make sure they were super clean. So then the number 8 bolt's a 1/2 incher as well. Finish the last 4 with the 3/8 again. So we got 9, 10, 11, and 12. So when you do that last round, you know those bolts should not be moving at all. And if they do, that's fine. Just do another round. You know, like I said, I like to do 3 just to be on the safe side. But you know, if something starts moving, you feel like you need to go around it again, just go ahead and go around it again. So I'm just gonna let this sit now. I'm gonna at least let it sit overnight before I go like putting the water neck or anything. I mean, that probably sounds kind of goofy, but I do not want to stress this intake. I don't want to pull on it or do anything. I just want everything to, you know, it's evenly torqued, and just let all that RTV dry up and all that stuff. So finally making some progress. Should be a fairly smooth sailing from here on out. Let's get this stuff slapped back together. Alright, moving along. Got the valve covers off. Just been trying to clean them up. It's the worst part about doing this, is just tedious, you know, especially after doing the intake. It's the same thing. It's not that it's hard, it's just a lot of tedious cleaning. Plastic razor blade. Let's get valve covers cleaned up. Spent a lot of time with the vacuum and get these all cleaned up, and gonna go around and check all the rocker arms, make sure they're torqued up right. I mean, they should be fine, but you know, it's gonna go around, pick a pair of rockers, get them on the heel of the cam and check the torque on them, go through all of them, make sure that's all good before I go putting the valve covers back on there. Alright, I'm just trying to finish cleaning up here. Plastic razor blade, using Q-tips, you know, just trying to pick up little pieces of gasket material out of here, get it as clean as it can be. We checked the torque on all the rocker arms. It's all good. I pulled all the plugs out so we could spin the motor over easier, and then put the plugs back in after that. And I got some studs. So I think we're going to use the studs to line up the rocker arms, or the valve covers. Slide the valve covers over those studs. Should keep the gasket in place. Pull the studs out and replace them with the bolts. Alright, use my bottle of wax and grease remover. Got everything cleaned up, the valve cover, the head cleaned up. Got the 1/4 inch studs put in there. So they're going to hold this gasket in place. I'm going to slide the valve cover over, and then we can pull the studs out one by one and put the bolts in there. I'm going to try doing it. Usually I put RTV on this stuff. I'll put a really thin layer on the head. I'll put a real thin layer on the valve cover. But this time I think I'm just going to try it with nothing, and I guess if it leaks I'll be doing it again, but see what happens. Alright, so got the valve cover on. So we're just going to start taking one of these studs out, and got the mounting bolt with some Loctite on there. Alright, got the valve covers finished up. Got the working on the heater core stuff. So I've got that flow restrictor. Just put some silicone on it and push it in with like a 1/4 inch extension. Should be able to just push it in with the flat side. Getting ready to put the thermostat on there. Got a new gasket. I like to put a really thin RTV layer on here, and then when you put this thermostat in, you know, if you put it in right, this housing will hold the thermostat. So you put that burp hole in at the 12 o'clock position, and then either twist it to the left or the right, and that hole is actually kind of oblong, so it kind of has like an interference fit. So you know, you should be able to hold the housing upside down and the thermostat won't fall out. I know a lot of people have issues with that. And got a new thermostat because had it apart anyways, and I can't remember the last time I put a thermostat in this car, so I can pretty much guarantee if I didn't put a new one in, it would fail not too long after getting this done. So figured, you know, do a little preemptive wrenching here and just put the new thermostat in there. So I'll throw this on there. Alright guys, moving along here. Got the intake on there. Got the hoses on. I heard an interesting snapping noise putting this on, so I'm sure my plastic radiator just broke. So we'll find that out as soon as I fire this thing up. And already cleaned up one of the O2 sensors. I'm doing another one right now. So we'll get the other O2 back in there, cleaned up. Finish buttoning this thing up. Should be about ready to fill it with coolant and fire it. Alright guys, getting ready to energize this battery and see what happens here. Let's see if we got power. Yeah, we do. Okay. Got bare backup, got the fire extinguisher. Be sure to scream if something's going wrong.
Oh yeah.
I'll have to prime, I got to prime up the fuel system anyways. Let's see. Okay. sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
Circulate coolant and all that. Yeah.